Alright guys, let's continue looking at the app that we were building. As you can see, there is no change in the code that I made, uh, but still this would run this time for whatever reason. Uh, so to give you a brief sort of recap, we were building a Jupyter notebook. We had like these three libraries that were needed. One called transformers for calling the Hugging Face model. We're importing pipeline uh, from .env. We are loading the function, or we're importing the function load underscore .env, and from OpenAI we are importing OpenAI. Once we're done with that, we load the environmental variables. Again, make sure to have the right keys in the .env file. Then we borrowed this code from the Hugging Face library, where we create an image to text pipe using the pipeline abstraction. The task is image to text, and the model is the Salesforce flip image caption large model. Remember, this was the model that we were trying to use. If you go to models, uh, image to text, this is the one, Salesforce, and we got this code from here. Use this model transformers. Here's where we got this code from. Alright, and based on that, we are doing the inference, calling the image to text pipe, feeding it in the abstract colors JPEG, this one, and getting a caption output. If I run the cell, you should be able to see the output within a span of few seconds. Alright, painting of a blue and green watercolor background with white border. Now, for OpenAI, this is where the application was having issues. It was an issue with the internet connection, I feel, because the code hasn't changed and it just started working. So if this happens to you too, then just like give it some time, close all the windows and then restart it, it should work. So the code here, if we go line by line, again we got this from OpenAI. Within OpenAI documentation, if you go into OpenAI documentation or even API reference, within the API reference, if we just go to the chat model, which is what we want, make sure you change the library to Python here, you'll get the code for how to use the chat model. It basically first says import OpenAI, then create a new client, which is client equal to OpenAI with the function. Once that is done, once the client is established, we can call the completion function, which is like client chat.completions.create. Within that, we can give a bunch of sort of parameters. This is the code that I copied and I had pasted it here, and then I made a few modifications. Same as the code, I create a client which is client equal to OpenAI. Then within the completion variable, I call the same function, client chat completions.create. Within that, I specify the model that I want to use, GPT-4o. I set the temperature to be very low so that it gives consistent response. I limit the max token to 200, and then the messages is this message list. Here in the message list, the first message is always the system message, as you can see. This is where we set how the GPT should behave. The format is like what you see on the screen. The role should be system. Content is like what you want or how you want the GPT to behave. In this case, I set it to you are an expert short storyteller. Using a simple narrative, you generate story in less than 100 words based on a given scenario. Now, on to this, we are adding a new message with the role user. As I previously mentioned, there are three roles that a chat prompt can take: system, user, or AI. In this case, I am querying the GPT model, so the role is user, and the content is the text that I am getting from the Hugging Face model. I just append it to the list that I created, and then pass that on to the completion like sort of variable that I had given. Here I am just getting the out message, which is essentially completion.choices.message. If I don't do this, if I just say chat.completion equal to completion, you will be able to see that I get a big object, which is chat completion object, which has a whole lot of stuff. Within that, if you see, if I go to choices, I have choice, and then, sorry, if I go to, yeah, choices, within choices is a list, and within that list, I have a bunch of like stuff. Within that, message is what I'm looking at, because that's what the output of the model is. That's where the output of the model is. So I should have to like write completion or whatever the name of the variable is dot choices. Since this is a list, I want the first thing within choice, which is the message, and then any message, I want the content. If I do this and run this again, you will just see the output message, which is in a quaint village and so on and so forth. This is a story that ChatGPT comes up with. Alright, so this is exactly how you would run OpenAI. As you can see, you can pretty much have the model running in like a very few lines of code. Alright, let's continue building this and turning this into an app. Right. For doing that, what we first need to do is convert these into functions so that we can use that functions within our app we're trying to build. So if we put this into a function, for example, let's start with the Hugging Face one. Let's call a function called define image to text. This can take in the URL of the image. I can say image URL, and the function will literally be just this: build a pipeline, then extract text out of that, and return the text. Text. So instead of hard coding a single JPEG, I will give image URL, which I'm getting from here, as an input. Alright. Let's test if this, that's the function. Let's test this if this function works. Let's get a scenario equal to image to text, and instead of this I can put in again abstract colors.jpg, which is from here. Right. And let me print scenario. As you can see, this is just wrapped up into a function, and it is doing exactly what it did previously, and it is just giving a caption to the image that I just gave it to. Alright, so this first function is working. Let's convert this into a function as well. Let's call this text generation. Text generation, and this takes in a message that we'll append eventually. Alright, again, you can put all of this inside the function call. Let's take this outside. Alright, this function let's return out underscore message. All right. Oops, I need to indent this. Yeah. So this function .t, this function creates a new client. Then this is the default message that we have, which is where we are saying you need to behave in a certain way. Then we are appending the message that we're getting from the function inside this message list, and then inside the completion, or you can call this like response also, we're creating the same like client chat completion and passing it a bunch of parameters. And in the out message, what we are doing is instead of there, here, and at the end we are returning out message. Right, you can put return in a this. All right, let's see if this function works. Let's create a new cell. Text generation. Let me define message as this here, and instead of text I'm getting a scenario which I previously defined there. Text generation, message. Let me store the response. There's a story here, and then print story. Alright, and this function return is outside the function. Oops. There, and issue with intent. Alright, let's run the function and then run this message. Alright, so as we can see, we got a new output, which is a story from the ChatGPT model, but this time it's within a function. Alright, hope this is clear up until now. We can directly use these functions to extend or integrate it into our app. Now let's start looking at the app that we had. Basically, we need to integrate these codes into the app. So let's start looking at that. If you remember, we had the base like sort of Flask app setup, in which if we go to the base route, we'll get the about.html, and if we go to milestone 1, we should be rendering the milestone1.html template. Within the templates, if we see, milestone 1 is missing .html. Alright, if we see this, that should be fine. Alright, let's run the app to show current status. So as I said, this is a blank app with about and milestone. Alright, let's add like functionality to this. As you see, the about is not working. Let's fix that. and in the base.html, index equal to index. Okay, let's see. I might not be passing the active equal to index here in the app. Oh yeah, so the index was not working because I wasn't passing this way parameter. So I just have to say active and index. Right. Let's go back to the model, to the website. Oh, there. Now the nav bar is working with milestone 1 and about. Alright, let's start building up the milestone 1 page. Now, the thing that we want, fine. The thing that we want in the milestone 1 HTML, as of now, it is just like, it just says header and some like filler text, but we want to replace this with the app layout that I had shown. For that, I'll just copy the code from what I had previously coded. Here in milestone 1, we'll set up 2 rows. So let me remove all of this. This is fine. Okay. We'll inside one row we'll set up like one column. Alright. Here, this is the first column in which I'm saying I'll create a form which has which will go to this like sort of function within my app.js. If you remember, it is calling this function, which is basically saying if I press a button, call this function, and it is sending a post method. That's why we'll talk about how to include post in a bit, but it will send a post message. Since it's sending an image, I need to have a multi-part form data, and the label for that is like upload image, and the input is just a text field. And then I also have a submit button which you need to press to send the submit. Now, if the server returns an image, that's what I'm setting. If image path, display image with the image path, or the default is like waiting for the caption, which if there is no image and no caption. So there are two variables that I'm checking. Like either first I need to pass the image path to render the image back onto the website. I also need to pass the caption for the caption to be displayed. Otherwise, it will just show waiting for the image to be processed. Let's see how this looks. So if we go to the website and hit refresh and go to milestone 1, you can see on the left I have this upload image, and then it lets me choose an image, and then this submit button. Since there is no caption or an image from the server, we have the default message that is popping in. Alright. On the right hand side is where I need my p5.js canvas to be displayed. Let's go back and add that into the code as well. So I had given 5 columns for the left hand side. Let me leave one column in the middle between the two sides of the website, and then I'll create another 6 column layout for our p5.js canvas. Alright. So what this does is that it assigns like 6 more columns to the canvas. It is creating an empty div with the ID of canvas.div. I'll talk about this in a while, but this is where I'm passing the story on to uh, the front end essentially. I'll talk about this in a while. And then I'm leaving a bit of space and adding a couple of buttons uh, within in their own like sort of row, each with 6 columns of length. Uh, Instead of adding a button directly here, I add it through p5.js. I'll just like delete this code so that we can see later on how to use this. But as of now, these are just like empty divs. One for start button, one for stop button. So the column on the right, as of now, if I reload the website, you'll see nothing because all of these are empty divs, which we will eventually populate with p5.js. All right. Let's first work on the but let me just show it to the website. Yeah. Let me refresh. Here, as I said, there's nothing on the right. Right hand side will come up when we start coding or when we code the p5.js part. Let's focus on the right hand side because we need to figure out a way to send the image to the server. Right? Let's focus on that first, and then process a bunch of stuff using the models that we just created. All right. In app.js, as I previously mentioned, in milestone 1, the form is sending a post request, right? So we need to add that into the app like sort of methods handling section. So for doing that, inside the milestone 1, I will say methods equal to, and say I can either get or also have post. So by default, the method just takes the get. The get method is essentially when I just go to this website. So this, when I just like type in this variable, hold on, if I just say /milestone1, that is get method. But when I hit the submit button, that's when I'm posting something onto this URL. That's when we use the post method. All right. So going back, I first added the get and the post. All right. Now within this, I need to check if the method is get or post. For that, let's just add if request. Oh, okay. So for handling the request, what we need to do is also import a request function from the Flask library that we had. All right, and all right, let me save that first. Now we can say if request dot method is equal to post to something, request equal to post, do something else, which means that the post method, that the request method is returned, just render this template. Like basically return what we were returning up until now, with just active to denote that this is active, right? We'll handle this like with just this change, nothing is going to work, but this is where most of the code for post function needs to be handled, right? Now within the form, if you remember the website, it is just a simple like sort of form. You can get like all sorts of data from the form itself, but as of now we are just getting an image data which will come from here. So to code that, we need to first handle the file, right? For that, let me just say f equal to request.files, and then here I need to put the same label as I used in the milestone 1 HTML page. Not label, name. So here you can see the name for this like input field is image file. So I need to copy this and put this there, image file. So f or file is equal to image. F is the directory that I'm storing files. File equal to that, and then file name, file underscore name is equal to we okay. Here's another library that we want to import, which is essentially the secure file. What we're testing here is that the file that user is uploading is secure, because we are accepting files from the front end. We need to make sure that people are not uploading I don't know, viruses or some like corrupt files for you to get like the server side data and so on and so forth. For that, the way we do it is through the workzoic utilities function. So from uh, work zoic, yeah, I think that's spelling, utils import secure file name. So again, what this does is it makes sure that we are that the file is secure, and the file name is also good. There's no executable files that are being sent. F dot file name, right? The next thing that we want to do is store this file in the static like folder that we had created, because we've already set up our Flask app to look at and render images from the static file. So if a user uploads an image, it should go into the image folder here. So for doing that, we need to get the path of this folder. But before that, we need to first get the working directory of where this file is. For that, we need another library called OS, import OS. All right. And then we can current working directory cwd is equal to os dot get cwd. So it will give us the current working directory, and within that, I know like the current working directory will be Lab-4 Gen AI app. From there, we need to go to static, and within that, we need to go to images, right? So the upload path, let's create a new like variable to hold the upload path. Upload underscore path is equal to current working directory cwd plus this string, which is essentially the file path to the images folder, images underscore, and then this is where we store the file name. All right. So basically we are saying just upload it here, and we can say f.save, save it in this path. We can upload this and save it in whatever directory, but eventually, since we want to display it back to the website, it is easier if we put it in the static folder. That's why I put it inside the static images. If you want to save it elsewhere and not want to display it in the front end, you don't need to save it in the static folder. But anyway, all right. Since we want to display it in the front end, and if you remember the milestone one, I had set up image path as a variable that it is looking for. If image path is there, hold on, which part is this? Oh, no, here, hold on, here. If image path is there, render the image. Otherwise, this image like tag won't be called. That's why we need to pass the image path. You can call it whatever you want, but I had set it up as image path. So let's create that variable, image underscore path equal to, since we're storing it in images and our HTML already knows to look at static files, let's just say images / plus file name. So the reason why I'm not using the upload path and I'm creating a new image path is because the Flask app is already set up to look into the static folder. So it knows where to look for images, and all I need to do is just like go to the images folder within the static and the file name that I just saved. All right. Uh, Now what I can do is return this uh, return up. Why do I have this here? This should be the first thing that comes right there. So if there's a post request, without processing and sending it through the models, what I can currently do is that I can say image path, because that's what the variable name is here. Image path is equal to this image path variable that I just created, right? And active equal to interaction one for doing the navigation bar. So what this will do right now is it will, if I upload an image, it will immediately display it as soon as I upload it. Let's just see before. Oh, I think I made a mistake. As you can see, it says that I got an unexpected keyword argument method. It's actually methods and not method, and that should fix it. All right, let's see. Okay, the app is working properly. Let me go to the app and refresh. All right, so if I choose an image, for example fish, and click submit, it will just be displayed back because there's no processing that's happening. What happened here was that this file was sent to my backend, and then that file was saved within my images folder, as you can see here, fish, and then that fish was sent back to the front end, which is essentially why you could see fish being rendered there. But we don't want to just send the fish back, we also need to send a caption and the story. Let's work on that. Let me delete the fish from here because we don't want that to be pushed to GitHub as of now. Alright, actually let me just like push everything that we have up until now so that everything is secure. I'll just say base app, commit to me, push. Alright, let's continue with the app development we have. So now we have the image file, right? And if you remember the Hugging Face like sort of functions that we made, for the first function, the image to text, we just require the image URL, and we already have the image URL. So what we can do is call these functions. So for doing that, let's create a new Python file within the main directory and call it new file, and let's call it model.py, right? This is where we'll put all our Hugging Face and OpenAI functions that we just created. So in this, we just need to copy paste these code. We already have load env, so we don't need that. Hold on, let me just copy these. In model.py, we need to import this. We don't need this because we've already called it in the app. All right, and then we have this function, and what was that? And this function. Basically, one function for calling the Hugging Face, the other function for calling the OpenAI model. Alright, this function expects an image URL and this function expects a message in the JSON format of a particular kind. So it's generally a good practice to document all of this, so that like I don't forget this later on when I'm using it. I'll put this in docstring here, so it's there. This that hold on. Right. Indent was an issue. Now fix it. All of it is fixed. So in the docstring, as you can see, I'm just writing down brief notes so that I remember that the message should be in this format. Otherwise, the function won't work. All right. Now I can import both of these functions separately onto like my app.py file, but instead of that, let me create a meta function which can run both these models. So let me write a new function called run models. Run model. This can take the URL, basically the image URL, and we can literally say scenario equal to this, like from the Hugging Face model that we had. Scenario equal to URL, and then we create a new message variable which will be in this format, which is basically saying that the role is user, content is scenario, and then I get the story out by calling this function, text generation function. Right here it is expecting message, and then I can return both the scenario as well as the story, because scenario is essentially the caption. Oops. And story is the story. Okay. All right. So the reason why I created this function is that I can just like now call one function and have both the models run in sequence rather than calling two separate functions. All right. So now let's go to the app.py part, and similar to all the other libraries that we've been importing, we can now import the functions that we just created. So from model, which is essentially this model.py, import the function name that we just had, run models, import run models. This app.py here, import run models. So all of these imports are also essentially doing the same. It is going into a file and importing a particular function, but in this case we are importing the function, the custom function that we wrote. All right. So now, since we know that run model accepts the file path and it gives two separate outputs, one caption and one story, let's just add another line here right after image path. And this is one way of like storing two variables at the same time, like unrolled like version. I can have caption in Python, comma story. Like those are the two new variables that I have, and get the output from run models, which is the function that we just imported. And for this, we require the upload file path. Again, this will take the upload file path and not the image path, because this is running outside the Flask app, as in Flask is not saying go to static and then look inside the image path. This is just a separate function as we wrote here, and it requires the full length or the full path to your file. That's why we have the upload path and not the image path here. All right, so this will now give me the caption as well as the story. Let's just pass this on to the front end as well. Let's say story equal to story, and caption equal to caption. All right. So on the front end in milestone 1.html, there will be like two new variables for story and caption, which will have the story and the caption. All right. Let me go to the milestone and show you where that is. So here on the right hand side, where we have a div for our p5.js canvas, that's where I'm passing in the story. As you can see, data. So data is a type in HTML which can store like any sorts of data. Within that, I'm saying that data story, and I'm checking if the image path, if there is a library called, if there's a path for the image, essentially like the image has been returned, print the story, like data story is story, or else the data story will have waiting for the story. I don't know if this was clear. We're using Jenga template, and I'm writing a if clause in which I'm saying that if we get the image path, like if, which is essentially because the way that I've written this, image path needs to be there. If there is an image path that is being returned to the front end, which is essentially that I have already rendered the image on the left hand side, then data story is this like story variable that I'm getting from backend, this story. Else, if the image path was not rendered, the default message or the default like data that we have is like waiting for the story. You'll understand this in a bit when we like do the p5.js part, but essentially this is where we are storing it. And for caption, right below the image, where we say if there's an image path, this is the image path, and so on and so forth. Right below that, I say if the caption has been sent, this just in the p tag, just show the caption, else say waiting for the image processing, which is what is shown right now. So all right, let's test this before I do the p5.js part. All right, let me go to the website. It should be running, so let me just go to the website and refresh. Let me just go to milestone. So if I refresh, it will just send another post request. So instead of that, let me go to the milestone, like do a get request, which will reload the page. There, let me choose, I don't know, say the same fish like image that I had and submit. But this time, if you notice, it will take a lot longer because in the background, both the models are being called, and it takes a bit of time for the models to generate the caption and the story. But eventually, the image will be returned, and since there is a caption, you'll see there are many clownfish in the aquarium with a pink coral. The story is also generated, it's just that like, currently it is not being shown because we haven't set up the p5.js part. Alright, let's push this code up until now to the GitHub and then continue working with the p5.js part. Hold on, let me push and Python model int. Okay, sure. All right. Integration. Something wrong with spelling. Anyway. All right. Now, this is where you'll realize the power of using the Flask like sort of framework, because now it lets us do coding both on the Python side as well as the JavaScript side, right? So for doing the coding on the JavaScript side, or to like do or to have like a new like sort of file where I can put in the Python like sort of thing, we'll do what we were doing up until now, basically, like how we do it with the HTML tags is like we say script and I say source. In that, let me going to the static inside JavaScript. Instead of example.js, let me rename that to uh, sketch, etc sketch milestone1.js. Let me copy the name, and here I'll just put that sketch milestone1.js, but inside folder, JavaScript folder. So inside the JavaScript folder, sketch milestone1.js. That's where we can do all sorts of JavaScript coding. All right, let me open that file. Java script. Well, anyway, there was a typo. All right. Now, as with this, you guys should be familiar with, right? The way we set up, what do you call, P5.js sketch is through like setup function and draw function. But hold on, let me first make sure that we have indeed linked the P5.js. Yes, we have. See, in the base.html, you can see that P5 has been imported. If you want, this is where you import ML5. As I said, it's up to you. Now going back to sketch.js, we first have a function for setup. All right, and then we have a function for draw. This is how like P5.js sketches work, right? All right, let me first create a canvas. Let's see, equal to create. Ignore all of these like sort of suggestions that you have, because it is thinking that I'm still writing in, I don't know, JavaScript. It doesn't know like the functions from P5.js. In canvas, let me give a 600 by 600 canvas. Now, if you remember from the milestone 1 HTML, I had created an empty like div tag for the canvas to go in, and the ID for that is canvas div. So the canvas that I just created is to go into that. So the c.parent is canvas div, right? And since this is JavaScript, I need semicolons. All right. Now this has created the canvas and has assigned that into has assigned the canvas into the canvas div that we created. But if you remember from milestone 1, we are also passing the data to this div. So let's get the data onto the JavaScript. For that, let's just first say div data and document dot query selector. You can also use the P5.js inbuilt function called select to do this. I'm just doing document dot query select canvas div. All right. So we have selected the div which contains the data, right? Now, within, all right. Now, let me, okay. There are a bunch of other like setup stuff that I need to do, but like since we have the data, let me just first display it, I think. So for that, I need the background of my canvas to be a dark gray color. All right. I want the text to be not finest. Fill. I hate autocomplete. Scale. File 255, which is essentially white. Let me say rect mode. We set the rect mode to center. I want the text to be drawn from the center. or like the bounds of the text to be presenter. And the story text is, if you remember, it's inside this div data, right? Div data, and it was a data set that we passed. That's how you access the data parameter inside the data set. If you have the div, then you can just say div.dataset, data set, and then the name of the data that you have. The name of the data here is story. So data dot hyphen is like common for any data set that you have to pass. Story is the name of the variable that you have to essentially pass. Like story is the name of the variable that you want. So here I just say story. Alright. Now again JavaScript semicolon. So now I have the text that was generated from OpenAI inside the story.text. So let me set the text size to be 18, no, not 180, 18, and text wrap to word. So what this does is that if the sentence is a bit longer, it will break it based on the word rather than like characters. And the text itself, if you look into P5.js documentation, text is like, it works like a rectangle. It requires the text and like where to draw from. So that's why I made the rect mode to be center, and here I can just say width of the canvas divided by 2 and height of the canvas divided by 2. Alright, and then max width and max height, these are the next like two parameters, would be width minus 100, that there is a 100 pixel parameter across, and height minus 100. Same. This is for the x and this is for the y axis. Alright, so with just this, if I save this and go back to my app and just like refresh, since the story was already generated, if I refresh this time, you should see, this time you should see a P5.js canvas pop up because we just added code for that, and also the text which was already generated. Hold on, it's a bit slow. But it should hopefully get there. Oh, there. As you can see, image. It has created a P5.js image, and it is displaying the text that we want. The next feature that I showed was the start and stop button, and for that, like essentially like to read out the text from the website.